Okay, good evening and welcome to the A-level presentation for religious studies. We have quite a good course that we study as part of religious studies for A-level. At A-level in St Ambrose, we study the Edexcel A-level religious studies course. And as part of that A-level course, there are three key modules or components that we study. We study philosophy of religion, we study religion and ethics, and we study New Testament studies. So the course is very different from what the boys are used to at GCSE. It is very popular and it has been very popular in recent years. Nationally, there does seem to have been a decline in religious studies, especially amongst boys, but at St Ambrose, our numbers have actually went up from 4 in a class to 15. So it is a course that is very popular. For each of these three modules, there is an exam at the end of year 13. So at the end of year 13, you would sit 3 2-hour exams. And probably one of the best things about how we deliver the course at St Ambrose is that we teach each module side by side. So there is actually a member of staff that teaches each module. So for 2 years, for example, you would have a teacher that teaches you philosophy of religion, and then you would have an exam on their module. You would have another teacher that teaches you religion and ethics for the whole 2 years, and you would have an exam at the end of that module, and you would have another teacher who teaches you New Testament studies. And especially because of the frequency of A-level teaching, where you have 9 or 10 periods a fortnight, I think having different staff who have different specialties, different teaching styles, really does enhance the experience for students in A-level RS. So what I am going to do is just talk you through each of these modules, some of the key questions or key areas of debate that you would study, just to give you a flavour of what the course is about and the kind of things that you would be looking at. If going along you have any questions, then feel free to just pop them in the chat and I will answer them after. So the first module that you look at is philosophy and religion. This is probably the most popular module amongst our students, and what we find is we have quite a few students, once they study this course, actually apply for philosophy at university. We have one student this year that's applying for philosophy at Cambridge. And we also have lots of students who go on and do courses like law and politics with philosophy. So it is really popular, but philosophy of religion deals with arguments for and against the existence of God. So you will look at key arguments for the existence of God, the cosmological argument, so why is there something rather than nothing? The teleological argument, does design in the world suggest that there is God? Does things like natural disasters disprove God's existence? The ontological argument tries to prove the existence of God before experience, so by definition, through kind of rational reasoning. The problem of evil and suffering, does evil and suffering in the world contradict the existence of an all-loving and all-powerful God? Do religious experience prove the existence of God? How trustworthy are they? A study of religious language, so can we talk meaningfully about God? What do we mean when we use language? Is that interpreted as symbolic, literal, whatever it may be? Philosophical perspectives on life after death, that's everything from religious, non-religious, Greek philosophers, Plato, Aristotle. You also look at scholarly critiques of religious beliefs, so you look at people like Richard Dawkins, and you look at religion and science debates as well, and some of the philosophical implications of those. So this is quite a rich course, and one that students can kind of get stuck into and get a lot out of. If you look at some of the key ideas or key questions you would be looking at in this philosophy of religion module, you ask questions such as, why is there something rather than nothing? So if you were looking at that from a religious perspective, someone like Thomas Aquinas thought that the fact that the cosmos existed was proof that God exists. So you would look at his key arguments in the Summa Theologica. Other people would say if we aim to provide a sufficient reason as to why there is something rather than nothing, then the scientific principle of Occam's razor would suggest that the simplest explanation is the best. And that means that God, as he is the simplest answer, would be accepted as the sufficient reason as to why there is something rather than nothing. You would also look at some atheist views. So you would look at someone like Bertrand Russell, who would argue that the universe is simply a brute fact. And when we look at all of these key ideas, we are building good evaluation skills because we're always evaluating different perspectives. What's that based on? How strong is that evidence? So we're always weighing up each of these viewpoints, which is the strongest and why. The second key module, which again is very, very popular, and one which is a great foundation for so many university courses, is religion and ethics. So within this, it's kind of split into 2 or 3 different sections. We study in total 5 different ethical theories. So utilitarianism is an ethical theory that came about through Jeremy Bentham, who was a political philosopher. That's kind of the basis for modern kind of democracy today. That would say that what is good is that which produces the greatest pleasure for the greatest number, and you would explore how strong that is as a theory, what are the downfalls. Situation ethics, which is more of a modern ethical theory introduced in the 1960s by some Anglicans, which looks at the idea of love. That which is good is that which provides the most love, and that would focus on consequences. Natural moral law, which is the ethical theory employed by the Catholic Church. And then kind of 2 ethical theories, one from Immanuel Kant, which comes from around the Enlightenment period, and one from Aristotle, who was a Greek philosopher. So we study all of those ethical theories and look at their different responses as to what is good, what is right, what is wrong. We compare and contrast them. And then we apply ethical theories to lots of different issues. So we look at environmental ethics. So should humans be put above animals in the environment? If animals can suffer, should we do things like animal experimentation? How should we treat non-living things in the environment? Do they have the same moral status as living things or not? There's lots of different viewpoints on that. We look at ethical perspectives on equality, and we look at racial equality and gender equality as part of that. We look at the moral and ethical debate surrounding war. So we look at pacifism, just war theory, militarism. We apply religious and secular ethical theories to that. We look at sexual ethics. We look at things like marriage, homosexuality, having children, not having children, and we look at medical ethics. This one's very popular as well, especially for those that maybe want to do something like medicine. This sometimes offers a little bit of a different avenue, but we look at everything from beginning of life, end of life, pre-genetic diagnosis, screening, embryonic stem cell research, cord blood, abortion, assisted dying. We also look at the relationship between religion and morality. So is God the source of morality, or is morality independent of God? If it is, where does morality come from? Some people that we look at would actually argue that religion is opposed to morality. And we also look at ethical language. So what do we mean when we say something is good, or what do we mean when we say something is right? So actually analysing what is meant by that. Are we saying that that's a key truth or fact, or is it just a statement of opinion? And again, this religion and ethics module, like I say, very rich. Students really enjoy it. A lot of debate, a lot of discussion. Great for preparing you to evaluate, present arguments, write essays. Some of the key things or ideas or dilemmas you look at are on the screen. So you look at things like you're in control of the NHS budget in England and Wales. You must decide what to do with the remaining £100,000 in your budget. You must decide between the funding of 1,000 hip replacements of those over the age of 70 or the heart transplants of 10 children under the age of 10. What would you do? So students would approach that with, do we focus on consequences? Do we focus on intention? Do we do kind of cost analysis? Where does the dignity of human life fit in there, if at all? Do we focus on things like age and how much comes out of that? So they would look at all those key ideas. Are consequences important? Are actions important? And they would study all those key ideas and different dilemmas. This is another one that you would look at. So you and your 4 young children are part of a 25-strong group attempting to cross the border out of Afghanistan. Just as you reach the border crossing, you see a convoy of Taliban members driving up the road. Everyone hides in an old shed. To everyone's horror, your 6-month-old baby begins to cry loudly. If the baby continues to cry, everyone will be discovered and shot dead for trying to abandon the country. You must now decide whether to break the neck of your baby to save everyone or continue to let it cry. Again, that idea, how much should your actions count in ethical decision making? How important are the consequences? So you're faced with all these different dilemmas and you're discussing all those kind of key questions and considerations in ethics. You also ask questions like, does morality originate with God? And we'd obviously look at like divine command, Catholic beliefs, Christian beliefs about God as being the source of morality. But you would also look at key moral philosophers such as Nietzsche, who would disagree and say that religion, God, is actually opposed to morality. And his views are that religion creates a slave morality which oppresses people, and you would weigh up the strength of his arguments against issues such as divine command. And the third and final module which we study is New Testament studies. And again, this is very, very popular. This is the new module that was introduced when the new A-level came into place about 4 years ago. And often students, when they started, thought maybe this is the module they would enjoy the least. But because New Testament studies is what you would call exegesis, so it's different from what the boys are used to, where they are reading a passage and thinking about what they learn from that in terms of their faith. This starts with students looking at the composition of the New Testament. So what was the context or background to when the New Testament was put together? Who was in power? What was the situation of the Jews? How is that going to impact how it was written? They look at the sources used by the authors. They look at how the New Testament was redacted and edited, and then they read key pieces of scripture in light of that. They look at like Greek influences on the New Testament, Jewish influences. They look at like scientific and historical challenges to the resurrection. They explore the question, why did Jesus have to die? Who was responsible for Jesus's death? What's the synoptic problem? And we find a lot of students really, really enjoy this module because you're not just looking to scripture to help you understand your faith. You are conducting a literary study of scripture as well. So like I said, some of the key questions you would ask in this: does scientific and historical evidence challenge the resurrection? Was the resurrection a myth? So lots of key ideas to think about and consider. If you're thinking about why A-level RS, I've just put a few key ideas down here. So the Russell Group of top universities speak very highly of A-level RS. They say that it provides suitable preparation for university. Both Oxford and Cambridge include it in the top level list of genuinely suitable arts A-level subjects. If you look at some statistics, applicants with the religious studies A-level were more likely to gain admission to study history at Oxford in 2012 than those with A-levels in many facilitating subjects. 20% of students admitted to Oxford University to study mathematics in 2011 had an RS A-level more than those with economics, physics and business studies. And research from Durham University on the difficulty of different subjects at A-level showed that RS was in the middle difficulty range, showing that it is a well-regarded A-level. And sometimes people think, well, where's it going to fit in terms of what I want to do? You can see there, it can fit into almost any course you want to do at uni. When you think about the literary study that you do, the evaluation skills, the essay writing, ethics, and that ability to think critically underpins a lot of university courses. And these are some of the more popular courses that students go on and study after A-level RS. It's certainly not limited to these, but things like law, business, politics, architecture, medicine, philosophy, and journalism are all key courses that people have went on to study, underpinned by things like philosophy and ethics, which they have found really useful. So that is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions or comments, you can pop them in the chat. I'm more than happy to answer them. Otherwise, I hope you have a nice evening.